So thanks for joining us today on our webinar. We have Joan Schreier and Jay Faber with us from the Nonprofit Donor Pros. And today they're going to help us learn a little bit more about how to get estate or legacy or wills or advanced planning gifts for our nonprofit. So they're going to help us screen our donors, find out which one of our donors out of our database are most likely to leave us a gift in a will. And not only are they going to help us with that, but they're going to show us 3 or 4 different ways through sophisticated products in the financial industry that have been around for a while, but we actually didn't know anything about. And in the last 3 years, they've really, these different products that are out there in the financial world have gotten really good, and it's kind of like a win-win situation for everybody. So I'm glad to have them with us on the webinar today to really bring us up to speed on a donor can actually triple their gift with no effort on their part, and they're going to show us basically the way to do that. So I'll kind of turn it over to Joan and Jay from the Nonprofit Donor Pros, and thanks once again for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us on the call, Patrick.
So we are planned giving consultants with a combined 50 years of experience in helping nonprofits throughout the country raise money. We help them identify, attract, retain more ideal donors with our legacy wealth screening software and 3 of our planned giving programs, which we'll talk about today. There is a current developing challenge that is facing all nonprofits. So we'll talk about the problem, how to solve it, and why our program should become part of your development efforts, regardless of your organization's size, mission, age, budget, in-house expertise, or prior giving history. We are currently in the process of the greatest wealth transfer in the history of our country. It's estimated that $30 trillion will be transferred to the next generations. However, the next generations, as we will see, have very different charitable behaviors. They're less generous, and there's going to be fewer of them. Questions?
No, but that's really interesting how it's going to be. I never really thought about how we're making less babies basically, and that's true. The population has thinned out a ton from the baby boomers.
Correct. There currently are 10,000 baby boomers turn 60 years old every day. Individuals between 60 and 65 start reining in their annual support in favor of uncertain financial and physical health. Research shows that the next generations prefer to give online, which means cash, and they consider volunteering as a donation. If your nonprofit depends mostly on donations and don't have plans in place to deal with this, they are not going to be in a position to receive these assets from your current, loyal, and new donors. Predictions indicate that 1/3 of this money will be transferred to nonprofits through, you guessed it, planned giving programs. This next slide is really fascinating. If you look down there on the bottom, it has the estimated number of donors. Well, if you look at the millennials and the Generation Xers, and we're looking at 20 million less donors that will be available in order to help nonprofits out there. So our solution to that, we offer and use legacy wealth screening software, as well as we offer our planned giving programs. And we have 3 programs out there that we will highlight and go through each one for you. And Jay here will talk first about our software.
A vital tool in identifying ideal donors is legacy wealth prospecting software. It allows you to find donors that meet your criteria based on over 40 different wealth and giving indicators. It even provides Facebook and LinkedIn pages so you can further research and learn more about your different prospects. The software is going to help convert more of your donors into estate planning donors. We offer 3 plan giving programs, options that address each important area of development: increasing annual giving, creating more major gifts, as well as additional bequests. The first one is called the Legacy Plan. And a legacy plan is simply an exchange of a problematic asset that has a tax liability built into it, an appreciated annuity, security, or even real estate, in exchange for an income stream over a certain period of time. In this example, this couple has had a stock that has doubled, and they've decided that they would like to support their nonprofit but get tax benefits at the same time. With a legacy plan, they can reduce their capital gains tax, receive income tax deduction, have tax-favored income each year, and still support their nonprofit in the plan at the same time. So in this case, the stock is transferred and redeemed, a legacy plan is issued, and the couple receives several different tax benefits, while your nonprofit receives 10% of the transaction, or in this case, $20,000 up front. The plans are also reinsured for safety. Questions?
So the 20-year term legacy plan. So basically this is a 20-year term plan. Is that if somebody passed away, would that matter, or is this a 20-year term plan? Like, just break that down for me if you could.
Sure. This is an example where the couple will defer their income for 5 years and then receive the income back to them for 20 years, and it will go to them and then any named beneficiaries or even your nonprofit over that time. So
Okay.
in their death, the income continues to be paid out, unlike a very common charitable gift annuity situation.
Gotcha. So long story short, now I'm kind of figuring this out. They have an asset of $100,000, and which has grown to $200,000, and now they're going to have a capital gains problem. So they don't necessarily need the money, but they have to start liquidating their estate a little bit. So they're going to transfer it over into this plan. And then by giving it to, quote unquote, a nonprofit, they receive a huge tax reduction, but the nonprofit receives the money up front.
That's
so they're
correct.
basically handing a nonprofit, $20,000, so they on the back end could receive more money. That's basically what's happening here.
Yes, that's it.
And then
this is going to help the nonprofit receive money up front as opposed to waiting years and years before they see money through a charitable gift annuity.
Right, through like a death benefit or something like that. Yeah. So this is truly a win-win, basically, for everybody.
A win-win, that's correct.
Yeah. So excellent. Very good. I like this.
The Donor Advised Fund is our second plan, and these have become extremely popular in the last 10 years as a way for individuals to make annual gifts to one or more nonprofits. So what is an individual donor advised fund? It's simply a brokerage account that allows individuals to make contributions to the account and then gifts to nonprofits after that. So it simply lets them use assets such as cash, securities, CDs, bonds, anything like that can go into the account as a contribution. And if they itemize their deductions, they can take a 100% charitable deduction with their contributions. So each year, the donor can make distributions called grants of $50 or more to as many nonprofits as they like. The Donor Advised Fund widget is a add-on to your website for the giving page that allows people that do have a donor advised fund to quickly and easily make a grant to your nonprofit while they're visiting your website. And by using that, you can attract more donations than you'd receive otherwise. Our donor advised fund account has a low $5,000 minimum opening deposit, a low $50 minimum grant, and low management fees that don't apply until the account balance is over $250,000. Promoting donor advised funds will open the door to increased donations that your nonprofit would probably not otherwise receive. Questions?
Yeah, if you could, Jake, let's go back one slide. And you spoke about, so I have seen probably five, well, with the large donors, with our major donors, a decent percentage, like 15% of those, of these major donors, you know, $500,000 donors, $50,000 donors, own a corporation or are the CEO of a corporation or a key player in the corporation, and they receive stock. They are awarded stock. So they may have, for example, a salary of $300,000, but they're awarded about $1 million a year in stock. And so you're saying with an individualized donor-like advised fund, they could take a percentage of that paper that they received, which is one day going to have a huge tax burden on them when they, you know, cash it out. They can somehow convert that awarded stock to a donor advised fund and get a decent tax deduction on their end. And am I hearing that right? Because that is happening all the time. That problem of I've been awarded stock, and you know, obviously receiving stock is not a problem. It's a realized gain when you sell it and transfer it to money. So they usually just let it sit there because they don't want to receive it as income, because then they'll just get taxed heavier on already a heavily taxed salary that they receive. So can you make sense of what I just said at all?
Sure. What a donor would do in that case is, as they receive those stock options that they can exercise at a future date, they can convert those along the way and receive the value of the stock at that point and make a contribution for those years. So that way, each year or as often as they like, they can help offset their income with some of the stock that they're receiving. And that, of course, is going to reduce their tax liability with the taxable income deduction.
Excellent. And it kind of just makes sense, because it's paper money. It's not real until you realize, a sale, so to speak. You cash that in. But if they can, in a sense, transfer that to the nonprofit through this type of vehicle, they didn't technically do anything. They didn't receive anything except a huge tax deduction. So that's fantastic, and I see that all the time. Large transfers of money through stocks, and they're just sitting on them. This just makes sense. So I really like this. So thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, our third giving plan that nonprofit donor offers is a charitably owned life insurance policy, which we call CHOLI. The way that this works, the donor makes a gift of cash to the nonprofit. The nonprofit then can purchase a life insurance policy on that donor, so they immediately become the owner and the beneficiary of that. And obviously then the donor is able to take his deduction from the cash that he wrote to the nonprofit. Nonprofit receives the death benefits upon the death of the donor. The great thing about this particular policy as well is that it has cash value in there. So if the nonprofit should happen to need some cash, they're able to go in there and use that. They get to use it tax-free. And this is available to board members, staff, volunteers, CEOs, anybody that is out there. One extra thought that too, if the donor should decide that he doesn't want to make those contributions any longer, the nonprofit does have the option to go ahead and continue those donations as well to the insurance company. Questions?
If you could explain that last part. So I was under the impression this was a one-time gift to this particular life insurance policy, but you were saying they could, I guess, pay in. Oh, I see. So you're saying they're paying into the monthly premium or the annual premium to keep the policy alive. Is that right, or am I getting that wrong? If it was that last part, I didn't understand what you said, where the nonprofit could continue to keep paying in. What do we mean?
Sure. So, depending on how the policy is set up, maybe there's lots of different options for that. So the donor could choose and say, I want the policy where it's going to be a single premium life insurance policy. Maybe the donor wants to put in $1 million one-time dump in there. Or maybe the donor says, well, I would like to have a 10-year policy or a 30-year policy. So these policies can be designed any way that the donor wants it to be.
Oh, okay. So, for example, the donor could say, I'm making a $5 million donation to you every year, so what I'm going to do is write, for example, a $5 million life insurance policy, but that's only costing me, instead of $5 million a year, that's costing me, for example, $100,000 a year, right? And if I happen to pass away, the life insurance policy could have grown to $7 million or $10 million or something like that. So, okay, that makes sense. And so it's cheaper for the donor to fund a $5 million life insurance policy with in a sense, a death benefit of, for example, $20 million, and fund that annually than it is to just keep writing checks for $5 million a year. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It's a great vehicle in which you can leverage those donations.
Yeah, I love it. It just snapped out like, wow, instead of making a $5 million donation, you can do that in a monthly premium, for example, which is, and that's still a tax deduction. So it's like and if in different years, you can pay differently, meaning you can pay it annually if you want, you can pay it monthly, you can, like you say, you can just do a 10-year, I make payments for 10 years, and then it's totally funded, and then when I pass, the policy pays out to the nonprofit. Now, some of that probably can go to my kids. I don't have to give it all to the nonprofit. Is that correct? There's a way to give a portion to my kids, like $100,000, for example, to pay a state tax or something?
Absolutely.
Can that be done?
Absolutely. The owner, as long as you indicate that to the nonprofit and say, okay, this is a policy that I have. I'd like $100,000 to go to my children and the rest to you. Yes, they just would go ahead and communicate that to the nonprofit at the time.
So depending on my age, a $100,000 a year premium for a life insurance policy is close to probably $10 million in death amount. Is that kind of right?
That's pretty close. You're exactly right.
I mean, that's not crazy to say that. Right. So if I'm giving you $100,000 a year in a life insurance policy, the death benefit is close to $10 million, depending on my health. And I could give $1 million or $2 or $3 to my children, and then $3 to $7 million to the nonprofit. And this is all tax deductible. And since I was only giving $100,000 a year, and I happened to have a car accident in 3 years, the nonprofit gets $10 million, for example, versus $300,000 that they would have received if I would have just kept giving the way I was giving. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. You know, and I mentioned earlier that you could dump money in there. You can. I mean, these policies can even be set up that if you would like to overfund these, let's just say rather than making that $100,000 every year, maybe you've had a great year and say, I would like to put $150,000 in there. You can do that as well.
And that builds up the cash value as well when you do something like that, right? Meaning like the nonprofit can take $25,000 a year realistically every year and still be in good shape with the death benefit. Is that kind of right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So by overfunding it, you're just building a death benefit greater. You're getting a better return on your investment. Meaning, if you overfund it by $50,000 a year, that's technically going to get like a 32% tax-free return on your investment, basically, versus throwing it in the stock market or something like that. Plus, it's a tax deduction. So, oh my God, it just makes nothing but sense. So, owners of nonprofits should kind of do this, in my opinion. Like, and maybe some key board members and things like that.
Absolutely. You know, they are out there. They play a big role in the donors as far as why donors do contribute to certain nonprofits. A lot of it has to do with the owners and the CEOs. They're out there networking. You know, and if you happen to pass in it unexpectedly, there's going to probably be a decrease in those donations as well out there too.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely heard stories of major donors who have just stopped. It's not necessarily that they died, but they were a key donor for 8-10 years to an organization, and then life changes happened and they stopped. And now the nonprofit itself is just trying to fill that void. So if they would have made donations in a more excellent way, kind of like this, the nonprofit would have a cash value built up into this that they could start annuitizing in a sense, taking a monthly or an annual payout to themselves while they figured out how we're going to replace a $2 million a year donor, that kind of thing. So this just makes a lot of sense, and it could triple the donation on the back end when the person died. So that's a no-brainer as well. So if the nonprofit is pretty stable, probably 10 to 20% of their donation should be going into some sort of vehicle like this, because it's going to triple on the back end. And since you've pointed out so eloquently that as 10 years from now, moving forward for the next 30 to 50 years, it seems that donations are going to be down across the board by 30 to 40% because, one, the population has gone down by that much, and then the type of donor that they are is going down by that much. So 20 years from now, 8 years from now, 15 years from now, every nonprofit on the planet, for the most part, seems to be, just because of the population, I mean, it is what it is going to be realistically receiving less money because of who and what their audience is that they're asking money from. This benefit will be there literally when that tsunami of no donors hits.
Correct. Yep.
And that's a good term, like tsunami of no donors.
I like that.
Yeah, we'll keep that one. I got to write that down. Excellent. Anything else to share? Any other slides? Where I've taken a lot of your time. I'm sorry about that.
No. Just one last thought for those that are out there is that there's been a lot of studies out there as far as nonprofits are concerned in bequests, and studies have been done that show that only 5 to 6% of donors or even Americans are leaving any kind of a charitable bequest to nonprofits. So, this is a great opportunity for nonprofits to be out there talking to their donors about planned gifts and estate planning. Because when donors die without a will, there will be no bequest coming to those nonprofits there.
Yeah.
So one last thing too then of how we can help. First of all, Nonprofit Donor Pros, we work nationally. We go all over the country. We do not charge an engagement fee for our services. When we come on board with you and help you and alongside of you as consultants, we provide training manuals, talking points for all of the legacy plan that we have, as well as donor advised funds and totally, so that your officers can be talking to your donors about the plans. We have ready-made brochures, mailers that are out there. We also offer non-ask donor event seminars so that we can educate your donors on planned giving, estate planning, and tax-free retirement as well.
Awesome.
Questions?
So long story short, you could screen their donors, find out 7 to 10% of their donors qualify for a legacy type gift or an estate planning type gift, and then the nonprofit could hold a seminar with those 7 to 10% people, and then you guys would be there to educate those particular donors how to more excellently give through these different vehicles. And then you'd follow up, you would in a sense hold the nonprofit's hand moving these funds into these types of accounts. Is that the deal?
That's right. That's an excellent way to target that segment of their donor base that is going to have the most inclination to not only make those gifts, but continue to take advantage of those tax strategies.
And you don't charge any money for the seminars or anything like that?
We do not.
Awesome. That's great. That is great. So that's fantastic. Excellent. So the numbers here on the screen, the nonprofit can contact you, ask some questions, and do follow-ups at these emails and things like that if they have any questions.
Yes, they can use any of these numbers to reach us directly, and we can coordinate meeting with them and taking it from there.